Thank you for joining the Guild Complex Presents Exhibit B. Those images were from photographic artist Tuan H. and you'll be seeing a lot more of his work throughout the show tonight.
Tuan is a photographic artist. He works mostly with people, sometimes animals. He's been taking photos since he was 8 and has exhibited in LA, Chicago, New York, and has been published in Esquire, Forbes, People, and other magazines, if you've heard. He lives life 35 millimeters at a time. Can count to 3 in 7 languages, that's 6 more than me, is soft in the midsection and takes himself extremely seriously, so he'll fit right in.
Deadly serious.
Yeah, all right, well, we're back. I'm Ian Wojcikiewicz.
I'm James Stewart III.
And it's another Exhibit B. It's our first one in a while together, but we're excited. We got a dope show for you today. But yeah, so as always, we have our partner to thank, the Guild Literary Complex of Chicago. Since 1989, the Guild Literary Complex has served the Chicago community through innovative programming that highlights the intersection of marginality, the power of community, and the impact of arts and activism. We build on Chicago's rich literary traditions through vibrant storytelling and radical inclusion, advancing access to and from the margins. The Guild Literary Complex supports and encourages voices of all backgrounds and experiences to tell their truths, whether they are literary powerhouses or talented newcomers. We view literature as a vehicle of connectivity and aim to merge seemingly disparate groups across Chicago's 50 wards. Thank you to the Guild again. Couldn't put this show on without them. So yeah.
If you have some extra change, feel free to donate.
Yeah, we'll drop some of their links in the chat, so take a look there if you want.
We need like a jingly sound.
Yeah, a little link jingle to put in there. But yeah, they do a lot of awesome work. Obviously, this show being only one aspect, so check them out.
Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we are on stolen land, a result of acts of genocide by white settlers in the United States of America against this land's indigenous inhabitants. I recognize the complexity of myself, a black non-native person, doing so, but I do it with an open heart and as an act of solidarity between this nation's most oppressed peoples. This land was, is, and forever will be that of the Potawatomi, Kickapoo, Miami, and the Sioux. I use past, present, and future tenses because Native people are still here thriving and surviving. Indigenous people are leading voices in the struggle against white supremacy and police brutality, and they are role models in the struggle for environmental justice. To find out more about the land you're on, we recommend you download the Native Lands app.
Yeah, Native Lands app got the shout out from CNN. It's for real. Check it out. All right, our first performer of the evening is going to be Emily Martin. We've known Emily for a long time. We're really excited to have her as part of the show. Emily Martin is a writer and teacher from Brooklyn. Simple, short, and Emily, please take it away.
Hi, I'm Emily. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Alex and Ian and James and Justin for organizing these. These have been great. Thank you everybody for watching and being here with us. I can't see you right now, but I have faith that you are there, and I am grateful for that. I am going to read a poem that does not have a name right now. Only one word for every day of the new year. A whole year spent perfecting a single word. You understand the way in which two people have misunderstood one another. They've switched bodies in the forest between jobs, a stage hung with lamps. Bleached in sequence, the tall grass, bearing fruit of the look at this, your cauterized gesture, has been missed, as if another shining image, as if it deserved absolution, resolving that each time we're walking this block was the first, and that we could do it again, to return as horses insisting to do and undo, to eat and clean up, to harrow a tract for the audience. In our stables, it is Sunday, and the actors insist in the afternoon and evening. What's not outside, but maybe further in, or in your pockets. Maybe it's in your pockets, handfuls pulled from the sky, never once having seen my own image, as resourceful as an only child, the weft, and let the droplets of fat rise to the surface. Like the light passing through your peripheral vision, an unexpected guest gets up, walks off his object, and goes on an adventure, slapping up against an invisible pane, standing in a valley shaped like a circus and changing his mind out loud, his calls return to him as drawings. A corpus, some maintenance, they begin to reveal themselves to each other. They call out among themselves, and you try to practice being in the right state to hear their call, what they want, their insistence, their deference, their humiliation in front of each other, and your own. For and trembling, hunting parties hanging on the wall, as a place where a painter has changed course, closing an open hand into a fist, or shifting the angle of a glance. Normally, one geological layer might represent thousands or millions of years, but here each layer in the deposit had been laid down in a single storm. To repent, as a painting behind glass, as a bear's pelt splayed flat, gagged and snarling, his face still attached and staring off into the corner. To try to get on TV as many ways and times as possible, in studio audiences, at the plaza outside the Today Show, but never in a way that would draw too much attention, just to be there, to know your face was saved. The way he went to medieval times, every day instead of going to work, you love me in flashes and pass through the players rehearsing, walking off their objects where the ground never was. We've made small and repetitive fates, lists of shuddered breathings. I ate 3 pieces of insolence. He beheld a valley shaped like a circus, a bag, dusk's infinite yawning insomnia glows from within the rocks that turn toward each other saying, yes, yes, that really is what it's like. There actually isn't an opposite to being alive. As they open onto what is the texture of the what has given in to the arc of the day, the dusk opens onto hard-boiled hands fretting with gold and fire. Their gestures carve out the space of an imageless act that the players rehearse turning toward and away. Rather a root than a wood, rather a rind than a jacket, rather to candy than keep alive. The language is complete, they exclaimed together, finally rising to stretch in the dim mahogany room. Yes, all honey will candy over time, and they will know us by the crystals on their tongues. Meanwhile, Paul arranges bits. He's trying to pull a thought up out of his memory, that she reminds him of a woman he saw singing when he was a child, in the subway, which is to say that he was afraid of her. He remembers these small childhood fears, the ones that stand out in high relief, as pleasurable, maybe because he knew even then that they revealed glimpses of what his adult life would bring, or maybe because he can see now that he gravitated toward them, took the horror they held as a sign that he needed them without knowing it. But that's usually the question anyways. Is there only one perfect word that will complete the task set in motion? Or could it be anything? Any words that ask you to follow their pulls and calls? Which is why it was a good play. That man had a lot of experience. That you could stop on the side of the road to take a picture of a long-horned cow. Running away from it, where is my paragraph of candles, my training? I went forward and ordered in the midst of a shocking and put a hot resolving dissatisfaction. The river as the current was listening on tiptoe, was like watching silent measure in exchange for 2 blind horses. The blinded to the river, toward the evening of the second day we judged ourselves. Though I couldn't help thinking privately that she told me my testimony was credible. And of course it is. Just look at me. Just don't stop looking at me, please. Trees decorated with diamonds, a network of orchards suspended in air, to lay under purple lamps as she had done, often. And all of a sudden, you're walking me back from the pageant. At Christmas, for instance, dolls, I believe, as content moderators flag down images and videos, do not witness, does not witness this. I told my one joke of milk and died staring straight at the post-it notes hung above desks strewn with rushes and reeds that float on the lake. The sun, Microsoft, etc. Rabbit, rabbit, a metal hot. Tiny billboards and recitations looping, let me love you in rushes. And all of a sudden you're walking me back from the pageant. At Christmas, there is a candle in every window of the plate glass skyscrapers all around us. But we've made these golden rooms too for hanging out in, where you don't even need to explain anything if you don't want to. And you're worthy without praise structures hung all around like a garbage, like a girding unwound. I am plastic and swimming in the pool that I stole and kept secret. And as we were walking, I wanted you to fold, to turn, to keep walking toward reams of fantastic valence and solidarity in a way I think you knew but could not own. So my desire was left to its own devices, and it was excited what it could make. It was exciting to me to be neither owned nor owned up to, like what is going to happen to my life. And all of a sudden you're walking me back from the pageant when two little men in bear costumes reoccur, once on the curb, kneeling, once frozen in the middle of a fight, once almost bumping into us, smiling intransitively. One says to the other, "What do you get when you cross a street with a poem?" Replies the other, "Killed." And all of them burst into lacerate peel shapes, to begin with horses, two, hurtling toward oiled wards, fingers made of wax that drip a golden bead on every lid, at the rest stop, at the porch light, fingers made of wax, each finger the length of a song or a night. Organs gesticulate silently, to be in for or of the belief that each time you're walking this block was the first, and that we could do it again, to return as horses, insisting, to harrow a tract for the audience in our stables. It is Sunday, and the actors insist in the afternoon and evening. And as I am walking, you are suddenly toward or away from the former elementary school, as in itself a silent guess, her only role as that of nurse, and mine as nature's patient, hinging out and turning in to stay up late and list each scabby, groping breath, to pick each gristle of the day out from the meat, just to wander between rooms and wards, to dream of a fire in a tunnel that I can love, of course, unto death. Yeah, kenotic humiliation. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, that was Emily Martin. Just great and weird in all the best ways.
Yeah, check the chat for some links so you can check out more of Emily's stuff.
Coming up, we have double feature. Two performers, one block. Won't be a break in between, so you have to, well, there'll be like 5-second break maybe, just
Get some
enough
more
to catch your breath from that hot heat we're throwing at you. The first performer will be Jose Hernandez Diaz, followed by a video essay from our very own Ian Wojcikiewicz. He won't be sporting a hockey jersey, unfortunately, but he'll be dropping bars.
But first, Jose Hernandez Diaz is a 2017 NEA Poetry Fellow. He is the author of The Fire Eater from Texas Review Press. Check it out. We'll send some links in the chat for that as well. His work appears in the American Poetry Review, Bat City Review, Cincinnati Review, Georgia Review, Iowa Review, The Nation, Poetry, The Progressive, The Southeast Review, and in the Best American Non-Required Reading. He is also the associate editor at Frontier Poetry. You can check his tweets out at Jose Hernandez Diaz. We'll drop the link to that in the chats. Again, The Fire Eater, check it out. Please enjoy Jose Hernandez Diaz.
Hi, my name is Jose Hernandez Diaz. I'm a poet and editor from Southern California. Today I'm going to be reading from my collection of prose poems called The Fire Eater, and I'd like to thank James Stewart for the invite to Exhibit B to read today. The first prose poem I'm going to read is called The Fire Eater, has the same name as the collection. The Fire Eater. A fire eater performed his tricks on Hollywood Boulevard by the entrance to the 101 freeway. It was autumn. Just as he was about to inhale the bright flame, however, he slipped on a leaf and fell into the street. A motorcycle swerved out of the way and barely missed him. The fire eater quickly got up and jumped back onto the curb. He counted his lucky stars. 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, but there was no reason to go on. At least he felt that way at the moment. His family of circus performers had abandoned him. He would have to make it on his own. Perhaps he could go back to school. Who was he kidding? Eating fire was his only skill. It wasn't much of a marketable skill either. Maybe he could make it on America's Got Talent, or get hired in a Vegas show. These were his hopes and dreams, or were they merely pipe dreams? For now, at least, he would have to be content with eating fire on Hollywood Boulevard by the 101 freeway. Maybe someone important would discover him there tomorrow. Maybe the flame would no longer scar his autumnal heart. And sort of continuing with the whole fire theme, the next prose poem I'm going to read is called The Fire. The Fire. A man woke up in a burning building. He ran to the front door. It was jammed. Then he threw a chair through the window. It shattered and glass fell everywhere. He was careful as he climbed out of the window. It was a 3-story building. A preacher was down at the bottom, waiting to catch him. He jumped into the preacher's arms. On impact, they both transformed into pigeons. They flew away from the fire, far away from the fire. And the last poem with the whole fire theme is called The Flame. A flame rode a skateboard to the corner liquor store. It bought a pack of Marlboro Lights. It packed the smokes and ignited a cigarette on his forehead. It inhaled the smoke. The flame rode a skateboard down Beach Boulevard. It did tricks on the board. It saw a lady flame leave Target and asked for her phone number. The flame was denied. It continued on the board all the way to Pacific Coast Highway. It began to rain. The flame pondered the redundancy of rain. Suddenly it fell off the board and scattered into ash. The flame was no longer a flame. No longer a flame. A flame. Flame. The Man and the Antlers. A man picked wild berries in the forest, ate them, and suddenly grew antlers. He was shocked. He ran around in circles. Why? Why? Then he saw a small creek. He looked into the water. He saw his antlers in the reflection, strong and sharp. Why me? He said. Why me? Then a bear approached him. He was startled for a moment, but then charged at the bear with force. The Man and the Leaves. A man chased leaves down an urban street. The leaves moved fast. He ran and ran. A young boy stopped him. Sir, why are you chasing leaves? I'm a starving artist. I haven't eaten in days, the man said. Have some oatmeal cookies, the boy said. I only leaves, the man said, running down the street. I only leaves. The Man in the Sandcastle. The man sat at the beach and built a mighty sandcastle. First he built a giant watchtower. Then he built a sturdy bailey to guard the castle. Next he built the various intricate rooms of the castle. Later he dragged his fingers in the sand and made a river just outside the castle doors. When he finished building the castle and river, he began to form an army of mud men and mud horses. This next prose poem I'm going to read is called The Red House, and it was published in Hobart. The red house has 5 windows. The red house does not have any new clocks. The red house has 3 Rottweilers, all of them named Samuel. The red house has quiet afternoons, in spite of the furniture. The red house has bougainvillea running along a brick wall. The red house has a blue fire pit. The red house has 7 candles instead of lamps. The red house was never yours. The red house has a lime interior. The red house has 2 roosters and an ant problem. The red house never forgives. The red house is not painted red. The red house has 3 orange trees in the backyard. The red house is not for sale. The red house doesn't write during holidays. The red house has doors as mirrors. The red house, pale and drunk at night. Sunflowers in the city. A man fell asleep on the subway. He woke up in another city. When he got off the train, it began to rain sunflowers. It was the middle of winter. He lit a cigarette and walked to a park. He sat on a graffitied bench and wrote a poem. The poem was about sunflowers, winter, and the city. He went to the library and submitted the poem to various literary magazines. He titled it Sunflowers in the City. The rose bush. A man plucked an orange rose from a bush, smelled it, and then burst into flames. The flames eventually died out. Ash. Later, the man's daughter came looking for him. All she found were scattered ashes. The girl then walked up to the bush, picked a blue rose, and smelled it. She quickly turned it into water and splashed to the floor. She washed away the ash. The mime and the old man. A mime fell to the floor and pretended he was dead. A young couple walked by. They stared and pointed, but continued on their way. Then a butcher walked by. He tugged on the mime's sleeve. After no response, he too continued on his way. Then an old man walked by. He clapped his hand beside the mime's ear. No response. Then he shouted into his ear. Nothing. Finally, the old man lay on the floor with the mime and pretended he was dead. The Dragon and the Coyote. A man looked into a mirror but didn't recognize himself. Instead, he saw a dragon and a coyote engaged in a game of chess. The dragon moved first, middle pawn, 2 spaces. Then the coyote parried the move. They stared into each other's eyes. Neither budged. After 3 hours, they called it a draw. The dragon flapped its guarded wings and flew toward a nearby mountain. The coyote began to howl a lullaby. When the man eventually stopped looking into the mirror, he realized he's the dragon and he's the coyote. It's always been that way. The abandoned shore. A man woke up on an abandoned shore. He had no idea where he was. There weren't any people around, only seagulls, sand, and ocean. He picked up a sand dollar and threw it into the ocean. Then he took off his shirt and jumped in the water. It was very cold, but it didn't bother him. Then he saw a ship on the horizon. It had a pirate's gold flag and cannons. The man quickly exited the water and put on his clothes. He ran as fast as possible, away from the beach. When he finally stopped running, he was in the middle of a large city. He was elated to hear the sounds of traffic. Immediately, he fell asleep at a bus stop in the middle of the city. This next prose poem is from my Man in the Pink Floyd Shirt series. It's called The Hole. A man in a Pink Floyd shirt dug a giant hole in his backyard. Someone had told him to go to hell earlier that day. Assuming hell to be beneath the soil, the man in a Pink Floyd shirt picked up a shovel and got to work. The person who told him to go to hell was a professional juggler. He juggled axes, bowling pins, and soccer balls. The man in the Pink Floyd shirt had accidentally bumped into him, causing him to drop his soccer balls. That's when he told him to go to hell. The man in the Pink Floyd shirt dug and dug. He told himself when he got to hell, he would fist fight Lucifer. He didn't much like his chances against Lucifer, but he thought it a noble endeavor. Finally, at midnight, the man in the Pink Floyd shirt dropped his shovel from fatigue and fell asleep inside the hole. When he woke up the next day, he no longer wanted to dig a hole to hell. He just wanted black coffee with toast and eggs. Bon appetit, man in the Pink Floyd shirt. So thanks again to James for the invite. The collection is called The Fire Eater. Thank you.
My pap is a guy who tests the wind by licking his nailless middle finger and sticking it up in the air, and then uses the information to eat on the upwind side of the house. Gram used to sit at the dinner table during that one summer and soak her finger in vinegar. She'd almost cut it off in a closing garage door, and the doctor told her they'd have to amputate. She had them sew it on, and she'd hold it in this vinegar cup while we ate her breaded chicken. She cooked Italian stuffing inside the turkey, survived mostly on meats and cheese and cigarettes, and she's given up on cigarettes now. My pap is a guy who likes to scrap metal. He likes to scrap metal. It started when he was a kid. He would travel the forest as hills surrounding his home. The hills were strewn with the enormous corpses of the metal giants which had once warred for the land. Anthropomorphic machines with massive lamp eyes like the headlights from a 1958 Thunderbird. He found that it was best to go looking near the feet. He could find plenty of springs and small gears there, and besides, the other parts were crowded. He only went around there to sell some stuff he'd found. My pap met my gram in a small village that grew up around the head of one of the fallen giants. My dad is a guy who says the same stuff. He's been on this cats and dogs thing recently. He claims the relationship between the two species has shifted over the last 50 years. Sounds pretty out there to me, but further research may be needed. My dad may have some insight, I just don't. He says dogs used to straight up try and eat cats when they saw them, and now they're all chill, and that this must signal some sort of species-level freeze of hostilities. The cat-dog concordant. I didn't like eating inside Pap and Graham's place because of my allergies. They had dogs there. I loved the dogs, but it meant lots of wheezing and sneezing. I used to eat out where the air was better, like in the garage or out on the driveway, and old dog Chrissy, who lived with Graham and Pap, would eat out there with me. There were lots of cats that would come investigating from the woods to see what we were eating, but Chrissy never gave them any shit, so the concordant must have happened before that. My dad is a guy who lets his hair grow long and flow behind him in the wind. When he was young, he took to the seas as the pirate Grey Beardless. He haunted the corridor from Charleston to Bermuda with his terrible crew. They looted indiscriminately and scuttled most of the plunder to the bottom of the ocean. They were in it for the spite. Grey Beardless and the spiteful pirates. It was Bermuda where my mother and father first met. He was readying another trip, and she was working shows at a club near harbor. Together they got over on the club's owner and took him for a good chunk of cash. They took to the sea once more. It was on calm water that I was born. You see, when you live in the city, Mr. Carraway, there are often green lights that blink at you across still, dark waters, and these lights are actually metaphors. The people put the lights up, thinking this is going to spur the new rich to reflect on their lives and what they've done to get where they are, to think on their goals for the future and what they're willing to do to reach them. Needless to say, the city is littered with green lights, Mr. Carraway, just fucking signifying at each other. It's a miracle anyone makes any money. The old rich don't do metaphors as far as I know, so I'm not sure how they spur reflection. Probably blood magic, but who can be sure? You see, when you live in the city, there's this pile of thing on the ground that may once have been an animal or something that came out of an animal, and maybe once it was roadkill, but it long ago ceased to be that, and now it's something much more interesting. Since it's been there, the building across the street from it has been demolished, and there's a new one in its place, but it's still not occupied by a store or anything. I think it used to be some sort of auto shop, and from the looks of the construction, it seems like it'll be a new auto shop, but one that caters more to imported cars. But how different are those from the cars made in America today? Have we not moved towards some sort of universalization of car parts? Really, who cares? That building is far less permanent than that pile of thing anyways, and not nearly as cool. You see, when you live in the city, your mind is often concerned with elevation and depth. Buildings are very tall, yes, but foundations also deep. Not to mention trains below or the antenna swaying atop the towers. But what about when you're in a car and you look to your right and the sun is blocked behind a high-rise and you can feel the high-rise pressing on you and looming in your head, and then you slip past it and the sun comes out from behind the building and you feel normal for the first time in maybe a decade, but then another building comes and covers the sun and that feeling is gone and you realize you weren't even feeling that. It was just some sort of structural interference with your emotions, and then sometimes you're in a tube in the ground. You see, when you live in the city, the coolest person you know is probably a witch living in a rent-controlled apartment in a building near you who uses her powers for good. Usually to make sure cable installers show up in their allotted window or that school lunch programs are funded appropriately. There's only so much one person can do, and most have been priced out by gentrification and overshadowed by storefront palm readers or candle shops. They usually like to unwind by attending various public meetings, PTA, city council, police press conferences, and audibly laughing during the awkward pauses as an act of guerrilla psychological warfare. Watching the speakers blush behind the podium is satisfying, though, I'll give them that. Things were way different 20 years ago. I had 2 recurring dreams. In the first, I was falling. Unoriginal, a cliff near my uncle's fort made an impression. Never far from my mind, I fell from it each night, and I could see the faces of my gathered family, and they didn't help me. The second dream, I drove a car into the Mall of America. Not crashing it into the mall, driving the car through the doors and tooling around looking into the windows of the shops. I remember being very peeved when the security men stopped me and asked what I was doing. Driving, is that so hard to understand? There's a roller coaster in here. Things were way different 10 years ago. I didn't mind visiting my uncle and his family, even though the cliff was there. Seeing it outside of my own head was reassuring, and its danger being so close was a bit of a thrill. Once, my uncle would tell us, this fort sat on a frontier of a war for civilization that civilization lost. Now it's on the frontier of a much more terrible war. He looked out over the trees below the cliff and said, yes, they're out there even now. And we said, who? And he said, honestly, I'm not totally sure, but I know they suck. I heard they have wireless phones now and don't change their own oil. What more do you need to hear? Things were way different 15 years ago. I sat on the roof at my uncle's house and drank ruby red squirt, and I could see through the window of his room. His desk is there, not much on it, but he took care of his arm. He had this massive split in the fore, and you could almost see the bone, but it would never close up. He'd always have to sit there with one of my cousins and pick the day's dirt and goo that collected. They turned sometimes and saw me looking, and they said, hey, we could use some help down here. And I said, hey, I'll go find someone. And they said, what about you? But I had already climbed down, and I didn't come back, and I didn't try and find anyone. Things were way different 25 years ago. This family lived down the street, and let me tell you, these people were strange. Robertson was their name, but the dad's name was Robert Sr., and the son's name was Robert Jr., and the daughter's name was Jennifer, and the mom's name was like Rachel or Rebecca or something. I don't remember because we all called her Ms. Robertson because we were kids, and it's weird to call adults by their first name. Even when you grow up, calling adults you knew as a kid by their first name is weird. It can't just be me. Anyway, the Robertsons were weird because Robert the kid always wore ties to school, and Jennifer always wore dresses, and they had chickens that they got eggs from, which isn't even really that weird, but they were real judgmental that we didn't have a chicken to get eggs from. And I said, hey man, I'm a kid, I don't even know where to get a chicken from, take it over my parents. Have you ever seen the San Francisco skyline during sunset from Alcatraz Island? I think I might have because I was on a tour of the island near sundown, but I can't remember, so obviously if I did, it wasn't very memorable. Later at the hotel, I took a Coke out of the mini fridge and then went down the hall to get some ice from the machine. While returning to my room, the fire alarm was triggered and everyone had to evacuate. A man from my floor pointed me out on the street to a hotel employee and told him I probably did it. I was in the hall when it happened. I yelled, what the hell, guy? Why would I do that? I just took a $12 Coke from the fridge and my fucking ice is melting. Have you ever seen a group of kids try to bike up a hill in the middle of summer, but they're too small to make the climb? It's really funny, but if you laugh, just make sure they can't see you because they'll chase you down, and even though they're weak, they'll tackle you and beat the shit out of you bad. And of course, one of the kids has those weird parents that take him to horse camp, so he's really good with a rope, and he hog ties you, and the kids find a big branch and use it to lift you. They take you down to the river walk and toss you in and leave, but the river's only like a foot deep, so they really didn't want you to drown, just fuck your day up. By the time you wash up on a bank downriver and people ask you what happened, you just say you got tangled up in a rope and fell because you're too embarrassed to tell them what really happened. Have you ever seen someone from the other side of town say, hey shithead, what are you even doing here? And then you turn around thinking they were talking to somebody else, but it's obvious they were talking to you? You're like, dude, I don't have any idea what you're talking about, but all they do is give you an inscrutable hand gesture that can't possibly mean anything good. You look around at the imaginary audience watching and laugh. The other guy laughs too and gives you a high five, and then you ask where the closest public bathroom is, and he says McDonald's down the road doesn't lock their bathroom, so try there. Have you ever seen the guy that comes around all the time and handles all the fruit at the roadside fruit stand but never buys anything? What is that about? What criteria could all these years of fruits he's fondled fail to have met? Maybe it's germ warfare. The CIA conducted an experiment once where they released trillions of bacteria into the New York subway system, but when I heard about that, I didn't think to learn the specific means of bacteria dissemination. Maybe they just lubed up a guy with germs and had him ride the subway like a normal guy and touch all the handrails and sit in all the seats. The fruit-touching guy might not even remember who he's working for. Do you think enough people know the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is an absolute shithole? Put the cigarette out on the brick sill. What the fuck do you think they should do? Run PSAs? Yes, they should. The people living there will look you straight in the face and tell you it's great, but that's because they're trying to sell you their house so they don't have to live there anymore. If someone is talking up the UP and they don't live there, it's because they have a loved one that they've left behind and they're trying to do them a solid by selling you their house so they no longer have to live there either. Someone needs to do something. Maybe we could sell it to Canada for preferential access to the strategic syrup reserve. Do you think people are afraid enough of cluster decay? Best time to go shopping is when the snow is iced up enough to walk on top. Exit sentries can't operate in conditions like that. They just fall in knee deep. But yeah, cluster decay. Like not on an atomic scale, but a big version. As small things, so big things. An atom and the world are cognate systems, you know that, right? Is that the correct word, cognate? Could be analogous. Regardless, what the fuck is the person scale version of preferential emission? Maybe it's not true about the atom and the world being cognate systems, though. Maybe not, but it's still fucked up. Do you think becoming an independent animatronic repairman was a mistake? Can't even get a job at Disney or Universal. Besides, it's all who you know. The animatronics world runs off nepotism, and it's a union anyway, and I was dishonorably discharged after the Rainforest Cafe incident. One wishes it was about the passion, but you see guys out here just punching the clock. Better off building bridges or some complex electrical grid, because this used to be about the art. I don't know what the hell changed. I'd repair 1,000 Chuck E. Cheese birthday bands if it meant people would recognize the touch. The small piece of soul it takes just to make the giant rat sing about pizza and the never-ending march towards death. But it's just a hypothetical because I can't get Chuck E. Cheese jobs anyway because the son of the guy that owns all the franchises in town is a meathead and he blackballed me, and besides it's union anyway and we already went over that. Do you think there's anything more beautiful than when the sun hits a frame of blackout smart glass just right, and you're speeding down the highway with the wind in your hair thinking about getting a cattle catcher for pedestrians and the fact that you at least have to comparison shop because you wouldn't want to get gouged, and then a 4-car pileup happens 2 lanes over because someone in one of those boxy Mercedes trucks was trying to throw their cup of dip spit out the window, but it wasn't rolled down far enough and he got dip spit on him and he crunched into the back of his semi-truck and died immediately, the airbag just shattering his neck as he tried to clean up. And then you feel it finally, for the first time. There it is. Solidarity.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for watching. That was me. I hope you enjoyed it.
Indeed, it was him. Member of the Bum Sophisticate. Ian Wojcikiewicz writes from Chicago. He has a dog.
Boom. Yeah, nailed it.
That's
All
it,
right.
the important stuff.
Yeah, all the important things. And first, obviously, shout out to the first performer in that blog, Jose Hernandez Diaz. His book, The Fire Eater. We'll drop another link to it in the chat. Please check it out. Awesome writer. And thank you again for being part of the show.
Next up, and our final performer, someone who took some damn time with their bio, Shailen Mishra. Thank you, Shailen. Shailen Mishra holds a PhD in English Studies from Illinois State University and an MFA in Creative Writing from North Carolina State University. At Illinois State University, his work was recognized with the Tom Custer Creative Writing Award, and he served on the masthead of the poetry journal Spoon River Poetry Review in different capacities. Currently, he's visiting assistant professor of English at Swarthmore College. His stories have appeared in the Baltimore Review, the Bookends Review, and the Shine Journal.
Awesome.
This is Shailen Mishra.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, James. And thanks to Justin and Alex for this invitation. I'm really excited to be here with Exhibit B. And I must say, it's a really unfair and a tough act to follow after the performance of Emily, Jose, and Ian. But so I'll try to do my best to keep up with them. The story that I'm about to read is titled Fate Accompli. It was published last year by the Bookends Review. So here it goes. She faced him as she spoke of how her stay was at her mother's. She sat on a low wooden stool on the floor, peeling the radishes and slicing them in coin shape. Already, her nose had scrunched up. She found the smell of radishes overpowering. Why even eat this thing? It's known to cause gas in the stomach and then loud farts. Her husband was not immune to them, but the radishes were his favorite. Saute them in oil, turmeric, salt, and he would cram down 2 bowls of them in one meal. And then he would belch and fart in his sleep all night long, punching the fresh air out of the room. But she didn't want to say no to radishes today. Not today. Plus, he arrived this afternoon from her mother's, and he had been without radishes for whole 11 days. He sat on his chair, which was pushed all the way to the wall, without his shirt and in his lungi. He took one last puff from the cigarette and dropped the butt into the finished cup of tea. The dregs at the bottom of the cup met the fiery tip, and the hissing brought him small satisfaction, like it always did. He turned the newspaper to the international section. I said, "My mother is coming to stay with us for a month," she repeated. Very good. He lowered the newspaper to make eye contact with her to assure her that the piece of information registered on him. That's when he spotted it. Looking past his wife, he spotted the tail, the lower half of it, dangling from the bottom edge of the storing shelf. The rat had taken a leisurely refuge. That's what it looked like behind the square tin container which had parched rice in it. From time to time, its tail moved like a windshield wiper. This was not right. This was precisely the reason why his wife took off to her mother's. For a month now, the rat infestation had bothered them. The pest hustled in and out of kitchen outlets, back door, metal scrap pile on the back veranda, and the hallway after dark. Either way, their activity was limited to running away from them. But one day a rat landed on his wife's shoulder. The audacity of the leap gave his wife a near heart attack. Till that point, she had tolerated the slackness on part of her husband in getting rid of the infestation, but she could no longer overlook it. These damn pests had become encroachers, threatening to push her out of her own house. She set a firm condition with her husband that until the rats were gone, really gone, she wouldn't live in this house, and off she went to her mother's. He toiled frantically for the next few days, purchasing industrial-strength rat poison, handling it with rubber gloves, mashing the poison in potato chops, and planting the bait strategically around the house. In total, he killed 8 of them of different sizes and stage of growth. He would wake up in the middle of the night to pee, forgetful of the trap he had set. He would step on one of the carcasses himself and get startled. After the first week of the extermination, the house was quiet. He was vigilant and apprehensive. For 3 continuous days, he didn't spot any movement. He declared instant victory and called his wife to return home. He peddled sweeping assertions over the phone and bragged a bit too. He revised the number upward to 18. He lied that he hadn't seen any rats for 8 days. All of them died in the first 2. The poison was so potent that even the ant and cockroach colonies in the house have shrunk. His wife lapped it all up and took the train back home the next day. And if she saw this rat now, she would be gone again. perhaps for a couple of months this time. Their marriage was not that old. The moment the house went dark at night, often their hands roved over each other's body hungrily. He calculated a set of moves that would be casual and doubly deceptive. He gingerly walked toward the kitchen under the pretext of getting water from the fridge. As he entered the narrow hallway, which connected the kitchen with the drawing room, he came face to face with the wall beside which the store was kept. He must have glided on air, or the rat was super complacent, since it still latched itself to the same spot, the tail canoodling the air. He leaned upon the tin container, piling his whole body weight upon it. The rat was strapped between the container and the wall, and it fought back with surprising recoil. He needed to be balanced in his posture. If he pushed too hard, then the container would make enough noise to draw his wife's attention, who had her head down and glued to the radishes, oblivious to the battle behind her. He kept up his leaning repose and increased the pressure. On the other side of the container, the rat was not finished yet. It fought back in waves. Just when he thought he was done with it, a renewed spell of struggle came. So much life in such a tiny thing. It surprised, but mostly concerned him. A teeny cry finally came. It reached his wife's ears. She lifted her head but didn't turn around. He gave it a few more minutes and then let go of the container. The rat dropped into a pile of cloth bags below without making any noise. That was convenient. He studied his victory and stole glances at his wife to ensure that she hadn't sniffed at the intruder. The rat looked bulky, especially at its belly. The disproportion unmistakably stood out. Well, he be damned. He amused himself thinking that he got a pregnant rat and its babies. He kicked a few scraps of cloth over its body. Later, when his wife got up and went to the bathroom, he hastily picked up the rat and tossed it deep into the backyard. He would dispose its body more carefully tomorrow morning when he would water the plants before leaving for work. Radishes turned out to be extra crunchy at the dinner. They're out of season indeed. His wife had reminded him, and so had the vegetable vendor, who was quite frank with him about the state of his radishes he was selling. It helped him get a bargain, but now these stringy and tasteless radishes harped the point that they shouldn't be eaten even for free. He should find an alternative to radishes. He's excessively dependent on them, it seems, to maintain the rhythm of domestic monotony. In that regard, he's not very different from his father, who was studiously devoted to fish. He would spend each morning going to the market and shopping for fresh fish. If the fish wasn't cooked right and complemented by other dishes, he would throw a ruckus. His father had a principle which he often repeated humorously to his children and friends. A man should have control over two things in life for peace of mind: who goes in and out of his house and what goes in and out of his mouth. His wife cleaned the floor after the dinner. She left the plates and dishes to be cleaned for the next day. She skipped some of her after-dinner chores, which he noticed but didn't question. She was, of course, rushing for the bed. Like him, she couldn't wait for the lights to be turned off. That thought swelled him up and made him a bit wet too. But as he was about to hang the mosquito net, she asked him to wait a bit. She had got desserts. She brought out a packet that she was hiding somewhere. It wasn't the type of sweets commonly available in her region of the state, but a pricier one. Sandesh. Where did you get them from? Don't ask, just pick one. Her eyes melted in laughter. He picked the one that was topped with cashew and pista, and as he was about to pop the whole thing into his mouth, she stopped him. Take half of it and give the rest to me. She was in a delicious mood, so forthright and at the same time suggestive. The corner of her lips danced. She snatched the half-eaten sandesh from his fingers and tapped it once on her belly and then popped it into her mouth. This is for both of us, she said. Both. It registered on him a bit late. But by then she had hidden her face behind the sweet packet and taken a step toward him. When did it? Wait, you sure? He blurted out. He showered kisses upon her after pushing the packet off her face, grabbed her tight, hugged her, laughed with her, and then made love to her with the lights on. Kink in the euphoria didn't take much time to appear. It hit him as fast as the rats bolting out of his way. He had just finished tucking the mosquito net under the mattress when the image of the rat, its swollen belly, dangled itself before him. He walked out into the backyard with the backyard light on. The light had a short reach. It didn't travel as far into the backyard as he would have liked. It didn't even occur to him to fetch the flashlight. Yet he was out there to make sure if the rat's belly was really swollen. He could have been mistaken. It just could have been a distended, diseased, or obese rat. Or maybe the suffocation made his belly to swell up. He squatted down and scanned the patch of the yard where he was sure the rat must have landed. And somehow he thought he would be able to spot the rat's carcass in the unflagging darkness. Then he heard a meowing sound from above. There, on the neighbor's boundary wall, was the outline of a cat. It sat there, carefree and contained, looking away from him. He felt thwarted, deeply infuriated. He found a rock without much trouble. He stood up and took aim at the cat, which was still looking away. But then he remembered the popular belief that killing a cat would invite bad omen. What about rats? He's pretty sure there is no such restriction regarding rats, but pregnant rats? Do they count? On a night like this, why? The coincidence pricked him like a million needles. His arm turned tense, even harder than the rock in his hand. He would have stayed in this trance had his wife not called him from the threshold of the back veranda. His abrupt departure from the bedroom and his posture at that veiled corner triggered for her a chain of premonitions. What? She asked. What's gone wrong? Thank you.
All right, that was Shailen Mishra. Thank you again, Shailen, for being part of the show. Awesome work. Check out the links we'll drop in the chat for you. And thank you again for everyone for being here.
Indeed. All our wonderful performers tonight. This show would just be two dudes talking into a camera without them. Thank you, Emily Martin, Jose Hernandez Diaz, Shailen Mishra, Ian Wojcikiewicz, Tuan H, who's been providing those incredible photographs all night long. Also, Mike Shapiro, producer Alex's uncle, dropping beats all night long. There's actually going to be a link so you can check out more of his work. And that's
one last thank you to the Guild, obviously, for helping us put these shows on. Couldn't do it without them. Please check those links out again. And yeah, I think we've got a slightly different date for our next show in a couple months. We're staying away from the holiday weekend.
Yeah, we're big, but we're not
Labor Day big.
Not gonna take down Labor Day yet, and that wouldn't be the holiday we'd want to take down. Probably Kashmir Pulaski Day.
Well, how dare you? That's the best holiday in Chicago.
But yes, we'll be back on Thursday, May 20th.
All right, yeah, and we're going to see a couple more Tuan's images before our credits roll, so please check those out. And thank you again to Tuan for providing them, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks for watching. Our show, unfortunately, will eventually have to end this evening. But you know what? If you find yourself wistful for the time that you spent with us, you can now have some Exhibit B in your own home. And by in your home, I mean like on your computer. Because we'll be dropping a link where you could download the accompanying chapbook for Exhibit B number 5.
Sweet.
Full of work from tonight's artists, more pictures from Tuan H. and joy beyond your wildest dreams. Download it for free.